Hi, everybody. Michael Britt here, and this is The Psych Files, what psychology is really all about. And this is episode 160, a video episode. Hasn't been a while since I've done a video episode, and created some visuals for this one. So I think you'll find this interesting. We're going to talk about money and whether or not it can buy happiness. And there's been some really interesting research, and so I want to just tell you a little bit about it. Hopefully, some good, valuable information here. And also, I created a what they call an infographic. And if you are on the Twitterverse, this seems to be all the rage. Infographics. Really not a terribly new idea. It's just other people call it data visualization, which doesn't sound nearly as interesting. But just the idea of adding some more visuals to the data, and that picks it up a little bit. And it's not surprising that it's coming out of Twitter because the idea behind Twitter is that things go by rapidly and such, and so to the extent that you can create some information that is easily and quickly grasped, that's great, right? So I know some of you are not crazy about Twitter, it's that short attention span world kind of thing, but I actually found this. I wouldn't have done this if I thought it's just a fad or something. I think it's an interesting way to convey information quickly, and that's okay in itself. And in the creation of the infographic, I just wanted to see if, was it worth the time? How much time would it take to create one of these? And so I'm on my homepage here, but if you just go into Google, if you're not familiar with these infographics, just put one in there, just put in infographic. And of course, there's some information about them here, but they're on all kinds of topics, whatever you might be into. If you follow people on Twitter, you'll see that they usually put pound infographic, that kind of thing. So it could be translating surveys into survey results is a popular one. Some of them are obviously created by people with some sophisticated graphic design skills. I mean, here's one here. And you have to get into that to see what it's about. But, just do this and you can get a sense of it. And so I've looked at a number of these and I thought, I've learned some good stuff here. This is probably pretty interesting. I wonder how hard it is to do because I don't have any graphic design skills. So, and they're typically, they're tall. Oh, here's one on the flipped classroom. And here's the idea where students do most of their learning through videos outside of the classroom and spend time in the classroom doing activities, things like that. So, you can see here's a long one. So various kinds of tools are brought into play. Pictures of people are popular. Pie graphs are popular. Here's a kind of a drawing here that's kind of freehand. Various here's some pictures here, flow charts. As I say, lots of people kinds of things. So they're pretty interesting. Okay, so I was planning on doing my research, this episode on a pretty neat piece of research that came out quite recently, Journal of Consumer Psychology, and this is it's called "If Money Doesn't Make You Happy, Then You Probably Aren't Spending It Right." And this article has been sort of tweeted around a lot. It is by Elizabeth Dunn, Daniel Gilbert, and Timothy Wilson. And it's actually quite readable. It's one of the more readable pieces of research that, just about anyone could pick up and, kind of read this. I'll just give you just a couple of sentences. From the beginning, scientists have studied the relationship between money and happiness for decades. And their conclusion is clear. Money buys happiness, but it buys less than most people think. So why don't a whole lot more money make us a whole lot more happy? One answer to this question is that things that bring happiness aren't for sale. The sentiment is lovely, popular, and almost certainly wrong. Money allows people to live longer and healthier lives, buffer themselves against worry and harm. And yet, people aren't that much happier than those who have less. So, I'm sorry, rich people are not that much happier. So I alluded to this in a previous episode, and I know we talk about the rich, and they're not happier, which seems counterintuitive. So they ask a very good question. If money can buy happiness, and it can buy some, then why doesn't it buy more? Why aren't the rich even happier? And the answer here is that they're not spending it right. Okay, so what I want to do is, in this episode, is just kind of go through this. They've got about 8 principles here. Just want to talk about the first 2 of them that I think are pretty interesting, and then show you do that through the infographic that I created here. Just kind of go through those, and then just tell you a little bit about how I made the infographic. It's not nearly as sophisticated as the ones, as I say, you'll see out there. Okay, so there's the title. If money doesn't make you happy, and you aren't spending it right. So here's what we find, and I put this into a graph. So what I did was I read the article, and then did a whole bunch of sketches on the back of another piece of paper here, about 2.5 pages, about 3 pages of scribble about what I thought were the main points and how that I might represent them graphically. So here's what I came up with to demonstrate the points. So their main point is this one over here, and I've demonstrated it using just a typical kind of graph here. Happiness on the left and your income along the bottom. You can see it got a poor guy and a rich guy. So here's your income increasing, and this red line is what people think. How happy people think they'll be. And we think that if we have a whole lot more money, we're going to be a whole lot happier. But the reality we find is that it actually kind of flattens out much sooner than you'd think. And as I said before, the rich are not necessarily a whole lot happier than we are. And the idea here, and Dan Gilbert has a number of videos on this on TED Talks. He talks about affective forecasting, which means forecasting, right? Thinking in the future, and affective, our emotions, thinking about how we'll feel in the future. And so this relates to this because we think we'll feel, if we're rich in the future, a whole lot happier. All right? And what we disregard, which is why this doesn't turn out to be true, we're not happier, is the first one he talks about is this adaptation, right? So that we adapt to positive and negative events. And I've mentioned this a few times too, previous podcasts. If we've surveyed people who have won the lottery, and 6 months down the line, they really are not that much happier than they were beforehand. Many of them return to their jobs and so on. And people who are who go through some sort of, let's say, a loss of a limb, some major loss, are actually back to themselves 6 months to a year later. And so it's hard to imagine that that's true, but that's what we're finding. And this is really all part of the positive psychology movement, the emphasis on finding out what it is that really makes us happy. Not to be confused with positive thinking. All right, that's more of a popular movement that focuses on the way you think. Here, positive psychologists, or those who study positive psychology, are interested in a variety of things, and among them, obviously are our moods, what makes us feel good and move forward, but not necessarily having to do with thinking positively. So, here is part of the reason why we adapt to all of the money that we have. We adapt as we move forward in life, and the things that initially made us happy tend not to do so anymore. Good quote here from the article. Money is an opportunity for happiness, but it is an opportunity that is routinely squandered because the things that people think will make them happy often don't. All right, so the question here, why are we often wrong about what we think will make us happy? So here's another infographic I put together here, and I picked out this, went to get some clip art, and here is a guy, and here he is today, and he drives this car down here. I should have made his hair color the same. You can see he drives a junky car, and he dreams about the sports car, like many of us do, and how much happier he thinks he's going to be. And so, again, kind of a thought from Dan Gilbert here. He calls these our mental simulations. So as we daydream, our mental simulation, as we create the future in our heads and we think about how happy we're going to be, we sort of forget that. So here in this graph, this guy has got he was able to purchase the sports car, but he's adapted to it all. It's no longer new to get in and sit down and all that kind of thing, even though cars do sometimes continue to reward us. So it's maybe not the best example. I've got a couple of examples coming further. But he's adapted to that sports car, and now he's thinking of another one, right? When you think about how much happier the car is going to make you, you don't tend to think about the things that surround that, what they call context here. You don't think about the increase in your insurance, right? So it's not just the paying of the car, but there are things around the car, just paying for the car itself, so your monthly payment, the insurance surrounding it, the need, if it ever needs to be, as all cars do, the repairs are more expensive, so it can be a bit more of a hassle. You might get more, you might be targeted by the police for speeding tickets and that sort of thing. All right, so if it's true that we are often not so good at predicting how happy we'll be, then, and if we adapt to the things that money has given us, then can money make us happy? And the answer in the article is yes, if you spend it right. And their principle number one is to buy experiences instead of things, right? So if you think about the things that really have brought you a great deal of happiness in life, I know I think about a trip to Italy that I made, about 12 years ago. It's fantastic. It was unforgettable. The experiences are really the things that are going to bring you more happiness than things. Now, I'm recording this on a Mac laptop that I bought last year. And at the time, it was fantastic. I was very excited about getting this laptop. But of course, now it's just become a part of my daily life. It's there. It's like your TV set or your expensive watch. Those are things. And I've got examples here about vacations in Italy, trips to Disneyland, dinner with friends, and I got a little picture here about playing cards with friends, having friends over, doing things with friends is likely to bring you more subjective well-being. And this is interesting. Here's a survey. So they did two approaches to this. First one's a survey, 1,000 Americans, asked them to think about both material and experiential purchases like this, trips and watches, and TVs, and ask them to think about which one do you think made you happier. And here's a little infographic. I've kind of stacked up the Coliseum, the trip to Disneyland, the playing with friends, and next to that is the TV and the watch, just to demonstrate quickly that experiences brought more happiness than did, or at least they said thinking about this makes me happier. Okay, and a little bit of research in addition to the one I mentioned at the beginning. This is Van Boven and Gilovich, 2003. To do or to have, that is the question. Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. That's where they did that study. And here's an experiment, and just to, because surveys have their weaknesses. And so here's a study, kind of an interesting study. You get your participants, college students in this case, randomly assign them into two conditions, and you ask them either to reflect on the things that they have bought. Okay, one group reflects on their computers and their watches and their things that they bought. The other group reflects on their experiences. All right, and then you ask them later on, give them a little mood scale, and participants' moods were higher when they were asked to reflect on their experiences. All right, so the first of a couple of experiments to show you there, and then that's the neat thing about the studies that have been done. They're both, interviews and surveys and experiments. Okay, so that's principle number one. Spend your money on experiences. Principle number two, help others with your money instead of yourself. Now, this is kind of an interesting survey. They did a couple of things you might not expect. Ask people, how much did you spend in a typical month on bills or expenses or gifts for yourself, okay? And they turn out to be, their mood. Then you measure their mood at the end of the survey, and they're like, yeah, okay. And then you ask them, how much did you spend on gifts for others or donations to charity? And you find that the more money people gave to others, the happier they are, as represented by this guy with his hand in the air. And it's an interesting survey, because it implies that if you donate to charity, you're happier. But you might say, well, yeah, but what if it's the other way around? What if I'm just generally in a happy mood, and it's because of the happy mood that I donate to others? All right, remember that kind of a correlation we're looking at here, weak kind of survey data. But they took it an extra step, which was to ask people about their income. And they found that whether their income was high or low, donating to others still made them happier, no matter whether their income was high or low, if they spent it on themselves. Right? So I think that this kind of graphic hopefully quickly translates or communicates how that research, how that survey was conducted. But they also did some research, which I have graphified right here. Again, this one's an experiment. Participants, I got the little sun there, in the morning, randomly assigned to 2 conditions, in which they were told, look, we're going to give you some money. We'd like you to spend it on yourself. And we're going to be calling you back later on tonight. But right now, we'd like to spend that money on yourself. Or in the randomly chosen other group, they were said, look, we're going to give you some money, and I would like you to spend this on other people today. Okay? All right. And then they also have another independent variable here, which is that they varied the amount of money. So we're going to give you $5, not too much, or we're going to give you $20. So you might think that the people who are given $20 and told to spend it on themselves would be the happiest. But no, that's not what we find. We find again that if you were told to spend it on others and you spent it on others, you were happier than if the group that spent it on themselves. And it didn't matter whether you spent $5 on other people or $20 on other people. You still were happier at the end of the day than if you spent the money on yourself. Okay, so the moral of the story here is go spend some money on somebody. And there's a couple of really, if you don't know anyone who needs money, a friend of mine emailed me this week and said, I'm doing a project and it's on Kickstarter. You might want to check this out. It's kind of interesting. Kickstarter.com. If you are doing a project and you don't have enough money to make it happen, you go to Kickstarter and you can put it up there, and people can, you could say, look, I need $3,000 to do this. Here's the project. It didn't involve this and that, and I need to do this. I need to do this. Got to travel here. Got to buy this equipment. And here's the end product. And I need $3,000. And if you would donate some money, and so other people donate money, anything from $1 to $50, $100, it goes up. But it's only actually taken out if the person reaches their goal. Kind of interesting. All right. So a friend of mine said, look, she was a singer and she wanted to go off to pursue her career in Germany. And so she said, I've got a Kickstarter project. And she emailed her friends and said, please help me out. And so I went and gave her some money. That's kind of a neat idea. Kiva.org. You might want to check that out. That is another way to help people who have projects. These are people generally in poorer countries who are starting businesses. So they've got ideas for making themselves self-sufficient, and you can help them do that by donating money. So there you go. Next time you're on the computer, go to Kickstarter or go over to Kiva and spend your money on somebody else, and it will make you happier, guaranteed. Okay? All right, so there you go. That's the infographic that I created. It was kind of fun. It did take a long time. A couple of people asked me, well, this looks like it took a long time. It did, in part because I had to read the article, and then I had to make the notes, and I went online. to find the kind of graphics program that would lend itself well to infographics, and that turns out to be just about anything. You really could use anything. I had a feeling I was going to want to integrate, well, I knew I was going to want charts, graphs, and arrows, and I was going to go and find some clip art to put in here. So this was made with, and I'm on a Mac, so this was made with a pretty cool program called Lineform. Right, I don't know if I have it up here. Yeah, here it is. Lineform. You can see it right there. And kind of a simple program, so-called vector graphics, which means that you can put images up there, and then you can sort of move them around, stretch them, and change them in various ways. And so it's a little easier than something like, let's say, Photoshop. For the PC, there's also something called Draw Plus. So I'll have some links to this. For the Mac, there's also Easy Draw. So these are vector drawing programs, and a little bit of a learning curve, but I think it's pretty cool. And as I say, these are clipart.com or clipartlibrary.org. There are some free ones there, and a little bit of Photoshop hackery in order to make some of this stuff work, but. It was kind of fun. I think it was a good experience. So there you go. Just a couple of announcements before I close out the episode, and one of those is to let you know. I mentioned this in the previous podcast episode. I created a interactive classroom activity, although you can do it on your own, called Finding Little Albert Activity. It's at www.littlealbertactivity.com. And you can go through here and you can discover who little Albert really was, according to some researchers. There's controversy around this, but they believe they have nailed down who exactly little Albert is. So if you're on the web, check this out, www.littlealbertactivity.com, and work through this, and you can discover little Albert's true identity. All right, so there you go. And when you get a chance, if you haven't already, I thank you for those of you who have picked up the Psych Explorer app, PSYC Explorer. Check it out. All the news, video, audio that's going on right now in psychology. A very useful app, I believe. And working on another one, and I just enjoy it. I think it's pretty cool. So I'll let you know about that when it comes close. All right. Well, there you go. Thanks a lot for joining me on this episode of the Psych Files, and I'll see you next time. All right, take care.